Hello, my name is Michelle Tefertiller. Today we are going to talk about first grade literature and reading. In the Memoria Press curriculum, this program is called StoryTime Treasures. There are two sections to the StoryTime Treasures program. The first section is actually called StoryTime Treasures. To teach this first half of first grade reading, you will need a student guide, a teacher guide, and one copy of each book: Little Bear, Frog and Toad Are Friends, Caps for Sale, and Make Way for Ducklings. For the second part of the year, you will need a copy of More Storytime Treasures, the student guide, a More Storytime Treasures teacher guide, and a copy of each of the books: Billy and Blaze, Blaze and the Forest Fire, Keep the Lights Burning Abby, Stone Soup, The Little House, Miss Rumphius, and The Story About Ping. Because the teacher guides include information for the phonics lessons tied to the readings, you will want to be sure to purchase those. In addition to the student guides, teacher guides, and copies of the books, you will need a copy of classical phonics and a set of phonics flashcards, as well as the lesson plans for first grade literature, or the first grade curriculum manual, which contains those plans along with the plans for all of the other first grade subjects. Memoria Press divides phonics lessons beginning in the first grade to phonics for reading and phonics for spelling. Phonics for spelling are in-depth lessons that aid in mastery, which is displayed when you encode or spell a word. These lessons should take more time, whereas the phonics for reading are phonics lessons that are taught prior to reading. These phonics lessons should be quicker and less in-depth. We just want to introduce the new reader to some advanced phonograms that will be encountered in the day's reading. We want to draw the students' attention to particular phonograms that they will decode. Some will be taught in isolation using the phonics flashcards, and others will be taught within words that have been pulled directly from the story. Let's look at how to teach a Storytime Treasures lesson. The first day you begin a new book, you will want to look at the cover with your student. The book may be a familiar story, or it may be new. Have them guess what they think the book will be about. Admire the cover art and discuss any details shown there. Discuss the author and illustrator and talk about other books you have read by them. In preparation for the lesson, write all the words from the new words section in the teacher guide on a board. Be sure to include the syllabication dots, as the goal of this section is to help students decode some of the more challenging words from the story. Next, pull the flashcards listed in the teacher guide and have them ready to go over. A quick note here: if you are also teaching traditional spelling, to avoid the organizational issues of using some of the same cards for both lessons within the same week, you can opt to write the phonograms listed for reading on the board with their clue word. The last preparation step would be to tab the pages in classical phonics that are listed in the teacher guide. Now let's look at the teacher guide pages together. For each week, there is a larger section of the book assigned. Sometimes it is a chapter, but not always. This larger section is divided into two smaller sections to allow for phonics study, and the decoding reading of that section, which takes a little longer. First readings always take a little longer. In the teacher guide, you will see the divisions of Day 1, Day 2, Day 3, Day 4, and Day 5. Under Day 1 are phonics flashcard numbers and common word flashcard numbers. These common words are part of the phonics flashcard set. All the cards should be pulled and set aside to go over prior to the lesson. Also listed in this first section are the syllabication of the words from the Say Each Word section in the student workbook. These can be written on the board with the new words I talked about during preparation to help with decoding. We suggest the words from this section of the student workbook be written on sentence strips to be displayed for the week. Each section of the reading for the week is divided into essential phonics and recommended phonics. Essential phonics lessons are, you guessed it, essential for the student to cover prior to attempting to read the assigned pages, which have words that students will not have encountered before. Don't skip this phonics work. Then there are recommended phonics. These activities include reading in classical phonics. It is important for a student new to phonics to read words in isolation with no context clues, which is why these are recommended. When you are ready to start your Day 1 essential phonics, Show the flashcard for the common word and tell your student the word. Have them repeat the word. Go through all the common word cards in this manner. In fact, read through all the listed common words a couple of times quickly. Next, go through the flashcards of the phonograms in isolation. Tell your student the sound and clue word. For example, air as in pear. You say it, they repeat it. Go through these a couple of times as well. Next, point to the new words listed in the teacher guide that you have copied onto the board. Remind the student these words will be in their story today. Point to the word and read it aloud, slowly, syllable by syllable for your student. Then have them repeat the word. Quickly talk about the meaning of these words. There is no need to look these up in a dictionary. Just briefly explain the meaning and tie these words to something the student already knows. Now look at the words in the syllabication for StoryTime Treasures section. These should have been written on sentence strips or on an area of the whiteboard as part of your prep. Leave these up all week for quick reference. Read each word slowly, syllable by syllable, then have your students repeat the word after you. Define these words briefly. Also, use the words in a sentence. If there is time, have your student use the word in a sentence as well, though try to avoid spending an inordinate amount of time on this. Now have the students open their study guides to the page that lists these words. Have them point and read the words one more time. Tell your student to be listening for these words as they read and to raise their hand or give a thumbs up when they encounter one. If you want, these can be highlighted or underlined in pencil in their books. Next, look at the vocabulary section at the bottom of the student page. Have your student read the sentence and emphasize the word in bold. See if the student already knows the meaning of the word or can figure out its meaning from the context clues. Sometimes there is not enough information to figure it out. In this case, just tell them the meaning. Use the student's words if they are close to the meaning. For instance, if the word is delight and your student says its meaning is joy, but our guide says it means happiness, use the answer of joy. Tell them your teacher guide says that happiness is the answer, but that the word joy is a synonym for happiness, so joy is a great answer. For this section, we only define the word. Complete sentences are not required. Once you are finished with this page, it is time to read. The banner along the bottom of the page will indicate how far to read for the day. Remember, it will be half of the week's larger chunk of reading. Have your student read aloud, pointing to the words as he goes. Take turns reading paragraphs or even pages if your student has the stamina to do so. At the end of the reading, you are finished for day 1. Day 2 will cover all of the phonetic components or essential phonics for the second half of the week's larger reading chunk. Complete these exactly as you did with the Day 1 phonics, then read the second half of the larger reading. After reading on Day 2, complete the comprehension questions together. Ask the student the question and have him answer orally. Write his exact words on a whiteboard. Model the process of how to expand his answer to be a complete sentence or to condense the answer to be able to fit it in the lines provided. Talk about correct grammar, capitalization, and punctuation as needed. Also, ensure all the words are spelled correctly. Then have the student copy this answer from the board to his workbook. For both Storytime and More Storytime workbooks, work comprehension questions one at a time. Discuss. You write on a board. They copy into their workbook. Number 1. Discuss. You write. They copy number 2. And so on until the comprehension questions have been written. Ensure your student copies accurately and with his personal best penmanship. Never direct your student to complete this section independently. Students need this modeling for all of first and second grade. Remember, we are training in every small detail. It takes this patience to form mastery through accuracy and neatness. Days 3, 4, and 5 of recommended phonics are lessons that will be very quick. Most days are reading list of words from classical phonics with advanced phonograms found within the words in the story section. Day 5 often says review as needed. Don't just ignore this day. Rather, use it to go back through the phonics flashcards and to reread the new words or words in their workbook. Should the classical phonics pages prove challenging, reread those. Then read the entire reading again. By day 5, your child should have read through the assigned larger section 3 times, though one student never reads all this by himself. Remember, if they were in a class, every student would have a section to read aloud, but they should be reading aloud every day. At the bottom of the day 3, 4, and 5 pages are additional activities in the student workbook. They vary with each book and cover such topics as English grammar, formal letter writing, punctuation, even some writing exercises. These should be completed together with you explaining and checking for accuracy. By the end of More Storytime Treasures, your student will have many new favorite children's classics, and he will be able to read them as well. All of the information I just covered is detailed in the front pages of the Storytime Treasures and More Storytime Treasures teacher guides. Thank you for joining us today. If you found this video helpful, let us know by commenting below and clicking the thumbs up button. I'm Michelle Tefertiller, and we'll see you next time.